At the busy town in New York City, Sebastian Valmont is driving his luxury car on his way to his weekly therapy under Dr. Greenbaum to discuss his intense sexual desires for other women. Dr. Greenbaum tells him that his condition may arise from how his parents treat him, so she hands him a book she writes and discreetly charges him for the book. Sebastian convinces her that she cured him already, as he can now resist photographing her killer legs. Dr. Greenbaum informs him that she can't see him for a month since she has a book tour, prompting Sebastian to hug her goodbye. Before leaving, Sebastian sees a photo of Dr. Greenbaum's daughter and tells her that she is precisely the type of girl he wants. The therapist immediately dismisses the idea and directs Sebastian out of the clinic. After Sebastian leaves, Dr. Greenbaum receives a phone call from her daughter Marcy, who cries and claims that her boyfriend has just broken up with her and posted a nude photograph of her on the internet. Marcy explains that she falls for him after her boyfriend told her that she's so lovely and has killer legs, so he just wanted to photograph them. Dr. Greenbaum realizes that Marcy refers to Sebastian, so she chases him down and yells at him in front of a small crowd for violating and corrupting her daughter. Sebastian smirks at his therapist as he knows she's overpricing his charges. When a woman asks what's happening, the wicked man slyly denies knowing who Dr. Greenbaum is and departs as he takes that woman out for a date. In a high-end New York City mansion, Catherine Mertul, a wealthy and famous teenager, discusses her prep school with Mrs. Caldwell and Cecile, Mrs. Caldwell's naive and childish daughter. Catherine takes the innocent teenager under her wing, promising to turn Cecile into a model student like herself. Feeling convinced, Mrs. Caldwell reminds Cecile to do whatever Catherine says and she'll go far in life. She then wonders where Catherine gets his strength, to which Catherine shows her a crucifix and tells her that whenever she feels the pure temptations, she turns to God. Mrs. Caldwell looks pretty pleased with Catherine. However, she suddenly acts coldly when Catherine's stepbrother, Sebastian Valmont, enters the room, prompting Mrs. Caldwell to leave with Cecile. After they leave, Catherine immediately snorts cocaine hidden in her crucifix as she tells Sebastian her true motives. Catherine plans to corrupt Cecile by having her sleep with as many men as she can, only because her ex-lover, Court Reynolds, dumped her for Cecile, despite everything she has done for him. She desperately wants to destroy Cecile's reputation to teach Court a lesson. Catherine seduces Sebastian for assistance and asks him to make initial moves for Cecile. Although Catherine and Sebastian have previously collaborated in manipulation schemes, he initially refuses as he finds her offer too easy. It turns out he's preoccupied with another conquest, referring to a lovely student named Annette Hargrove, a girl who has published a manifesto stating that she intends to keep her virginity until she marries. Annette is the new headmaster's daughter at Manchester Prep School, which is closed for the summer. Sebastian discovers that Annette will be staying with his Aunt Helen Rosamond in the Hamptons on Long Island, which Sebastian believes will be an ideal opportunity to seduce Annette. Catherine believes Sebastian has no chance with Annette, so they place a bet. If Catherine wins, she'll receive Sebastian's vintage car. However, if Sebastian wins, she'll offer him a night of passion because she's the only girl Sebastian can't have and it kills him. Sebastian initially rejects this offer because he's too attached to his car, but yields when Catherine raises the stakes and seductively tells him that he can put it anywhere. Feeling determined, Sebastian immediately drives to his aunt's house. At Long Island, Annette rides a horse with Aunt Helen when suddenly they hear a gunshot, which comes from Sebastian's gun firing. As he takes her on tour in his aunt's mansion, instead of impressing her, Sebastian ends up frustrating her as he comments negatively towards her belief in making love. Sebastian even tells her that he picks up a lesbian vibe from her, and Annette informs him that she wouldn't expect a guy like him to believe her. It turns out she received a letter about Sebastian's playboy reputation. In New York, when Catherine visits her apprentice, Cecile, who's having cello lessons with her music teacher, Ronald Clifford, she instantly notices that Ronald is smitten with her, which sparks an idea in Catherine to use him in her plans. At the same time, Sebastian rants about getting badmouths by Annette with his friend Blaine. Blaine speculates that Annette's friend, Greg McConnell, may have betrayed him since they're both in Kansas and have been best friends ever since young. Sebastian considers it and thinks that Greg is getting revenge against him for being intimate with his girlfriend last year. However, Blaine informs him that he believes it doesn't bother Greg that much since he feels Greg is a closeted gay, so Sebastian asks Blaine to hook up with Greg tonight. Sebastian pays him in return and requests to keep the door unlocked. Later that day, Greg boasts about how huge his willy is in front of his friends when suddenly Blaine calls him and asks if he can come over to his place tonight. Meanwhile, as Catherine pretends to care for Cecile at a picnic, she brings up Court Reynolds to her and asks how the two are doing. Cecile tells her that Court has been talking a lot about how he dumped a bulimic girl, which Cecile finds funny, unaware that it's Catherine who he's talking about. She then reveals that Court invites him over to Hamptons for Labor Day weekends, but she's hesitant with boys since she never kissed one before. Catherine offers Cecile to practice it with her, so Catherine asks Cecile to close her eyes and wet her lips, and then smacks her. Then Catherine gently kisses her. Cecile is comforted by how simple it is when suddenly Catherine asks her to kiss her with a tongue and explains how to do it. The two kiss passionately, leaving Cecile out of control. Catherine suggests trying it with Ronald sometimes. It turns out that Cecile and Ronald have been sending love letters, but Cecile is afraid that her mother might find out. Catherine tells Cecile to give her the love letters and she could arrange a get-together for them at her house. Simultaneously, Sebastian attempts to be romantic with Annette, plays a love song loudly over the mansion, and even hands her a gift containing a bag with her name on it. He asks her if she could join him in the pool, which she accepts, and changes her swimsuit. When she's done changing, she sees Sebastian utterly naked at the pool area, who asks her to give him some time to wear his bathing suit as if it's normal to stand there naked. Afterward, Annette joins Sebastian in the pool as she quotes lines from the letter she received. He presses her to tell him who sent it to her, to which she refuses since she vowed not to tell anyone about it. Sebastian pretends to be in love with her, but still, he has difficulty seducing her. Despite their chemistry, she sees right through him and rejects his advances, claiming that she knows that Sebastian manipulates and corrupts young women for his twisted pleasure. Later that night, the frustrated Sebastian heads into Blaine's place. He enters the room, catches the two hooking up inside, and immediately captures the moment with his camera. Sebastian threatens to post the photos online since Greg badmouths him to Annette. Greg is surprised and denies telling Annette anything about him. Sebastian then tells Greg to do something for him to get Annette. The following day, Greg and Annette walk by the shore while Greg feeds her Sebastian's fabricated story about his good intentions, but she's still hesitant about him because of the letter she's received. Greg convinces her to tell him who sent the letter, and Annette, seeing Greg as her best friend, informs him that Mrs. Caldwell sent it to her. Later that day, Catherine watches a clip from the hidden camera she planted in the music room, hoping to get a scandalous video between Ronald and Cecile. When Sebastian suddenly comes in, Catherine stops him from talking as she focuses on the clip. She ends up disappointed since Cecile receives a call when Ronald is about to kiss her. Sebastian then tells her that he finds out Mrs. Caldwell is the one preventing Annette from trusting him, so he vows to devote all his energy to destroy her and rejoins Catherine in her plans to corrupt Cecile. When Catherine starts to seduce Sebastian again, she takes it as an opportunity to tell her cruel intentions to rat Cecile and Ronald to Mrs. Caldwell. When Mrs. Caldwell forbids Cecile to do what she wants, Cecile will ask Catherine for help, which Catherine gladly accepts the opportunity to take advantage of Cecile. Catherine desperately wants her plan to work out, so she talks to Sebastian to speed up Cecile's sexual awakening. Feeling stimulated, Sebastian agrees not to disappoint Catherine. However, Catherine leaves him hanging after knowing that he doesn't have any progress towards Annette. So that night, Sebastian calls Annette and asks her to go out tomorrow. After learning Greg's thoughts about Sebastian, Annette agrees to go out with him. The next morning, Catherine informs Mrs. Caldwell about Cecile and Ronald's relationship and the letters. Mrs. Caldwell immediately heads home and confronts Ronald's flirtations with Cecile while they have a lesson. She quickly ends their affair and fires Ronald, and even says racist remarks against him. Later that morning, Catherine calls the distraught Cecile and hands the phone to Sebastian, who summons her to his house tonight. He convinces Cecile by telling her that he has a letter from Ronald, but he can't deliver it to their house as Mrs. Caldwell despises him. That night, Cecile puts a doll on her bed as a disguise and sneaks out of her house. Sebastian hands her a drink which she thinks of as iced tea. After getting drunk and writing a letter for Ronald, Cecile poses for Sebastian after telling her that she could be a model. After several weird poses, Sebastian unzips her jacket to reveal her underwear and calls her sexy as she poses for him. Feeling unsatisfied, Sebastian tells her to be super duper sexy by removing all her clothes, which Cecile refuses and tells him she needs to go home. Sebastian volunteers to call Mrs. Caldwell to pick her up, but Cecile tells him not to. Still, he blackmails her, prompting Cecile to kneel and beg that she will do anything for him. Sebastian then tells her that he only wants a kiss, to which she agrees, but only one kiss. Remembering what Catherine has taught her, Cecile closes her eyes and pouts her lips when suddenly Sebastian unties her pajamas and tells her that it's not her lips that he wanted to kiss. Sebastian then kneels and plants kisses on her down there. The morning following, Cecile attends Aunt Helen's brunch with Sebastian and Annette. Sebastian makes a malicious gesture that causes Cecile to be disgusted and walks out. Aunt Helen then walks in, feeling concerned that there's a shortage of volunteers at a retirement home. She asks if Sebastian and Annette can go, to which they agree. After the volunteer activity, Sebastian pursues Annette while maintaining a friendly demeanor to discredit his bad boy reputation. However, Annette sees through him that he didn't enjoy charity and tells him that it doesn't mean he's a bad person. Annette finds Sebastian too hard on himself, so she makes funny faces to lighten up his mood. Sebastian smiles at her as Annette continues to make faces. Eventually, she makes him laugh. Annette is delighted that he's happy, and Annette holds his hand while he drives. Simultaneously, Cecile discloses to Catherine that Sebastian wrote the alphabet with his tongue down there and that she felt an incredible explosion after that. Catherine is delighted but remains composed as she tells Cecile that she's so proud of Cecile for becoming a woman. She also advises her to learn to make love with Sebastian to make Ronald happy in bed. Catherine even encourages her to make love as much as possible to anyone, which Cecile thinks would make her a tramp, but Catherine assures her that everyone does it. It's just that they don't talk about it. That night, Sebastian finally got Cecile again, who now seems addicted to it as she asks him for another round. However, Sebastian kicks her out of bed as he's focused on writing in his journal. Over the next few days, Sebastian slowly falls in love with Annette, but still, he's not sure about it. Catherine then tells him that he loses their bet and if she can now ride his new car as the prize of their bet. However, Sebastian isn't conceding yet and even tells her that the only thing that Catherine will ride is him. A little while later, Sebastian heads out of the garden where Annette peacefully reads a book. He greets her with cheek kisses, but he can't control himself, and he passionately kisses her. Annette stops him, and they both feel sorry about the kiss. However, Sebastian takes his apology back and confesses his love for Annette. She reciprocates his feelings, but maintains her defenses because she reveals she can't trust herself when she's with him, and Annette walks out. That night, Sebastian enters Annette's room to say goodbye as he decides to leave New York and go to France. He tells her that he feels inadequate with her as she's inconsistent with her actions and confuses him. Sebastian also accuses Annette of being a hypocrite for seeking love but refusing to accept it when love comes to her. Annette, baffled and defeated by Sebastian's logic, finally yields to making love with him as she approaches him to lock the door and kisses him. After the intense endearment, Annette sits on her bed and unbuttons her top, but Sebastian apologizes and leaves her, now feeling guilty for leading her on. The following day, Annette flees Aunt Helen's estate, heartbroken and humiliated. Sebastian tracks her down through Greg, who informs him of her whereabouts. He finally traces her down at the station and awaits her at the end of the escalator. Annette tells him that she's impressed he finds her, to which he responds that he's in love with her. Amid the crowd, the two share their kisses and later on consummate their bottled-up feelings at Sebastian's place. After making love, Sebastian kisses her goodbye as she rides a cab home. Since Sebastian won the bet, Catherine offers herself to him the next day, but he declines since his romantic focus is now on Annette. When Catherine is expecting her prize despite teasing him, Sebastian leaves her hanging. Catherine then mocks Sebastian for becoming soft and persuades him that his feelings for Annette are merely infatuation. Sebastian is now ending their silly bet, but Catherine threatens Annette's reputation unless Sebastian ends their relationship. As a result of Catherine's threat, Sebastian abruptly ends his relationship with Annette. She doesn't believe him as she sees him shaking as if he's worried about something, but Sebastian keeps pushing her away and even tells her he loves someone else. Feeling lost and confused, Annette kicks him out of the room while crying. Later that day, Sebastian returns to Catherine and updates her on what he's done. He hands her a drink and expects to get his prize. On the other hand, Catherine refuses to sleep with him since she expects Ronald to come to her place. However, Sebastian has arranged a meet for Cecile and Ronald. Catherine then reveals that she knew all along that Sebastian would end up falling in love with Annette. Even though Sebastian won the bet at first, she forced him to lose his first true love, which she planned all along. Catherine even tells him that she doesn't sleep with losers. Feeling hurt and enraged, Sebastian flees as he declares war on Catherine. Meanwhile, Sebastian calls Annette's home, but Annette's avoiding him, so he heads into their house to send her his journal, in which he details all of his previous conquests and expresses his true feelings for her. He wants to give the diary to Annette in the hopes that she will discover the truth herself and forgive him. At the same time, the manipulative Catherine calls Ronald and claims that Sebastian hit her and she needs someone right now. She also informs him to go there for she has something to reveal, which involves Cecile. Ronald then kisses the sleeping Cecile goodbye and immediately heads to Catherine. Sebastian is still waiting for Annette outside her house the following day, hoping she would forgive him. However, he leaves when she's about to look for him. Simultaneously, Ronald leaves Catherine's place, seemingly enraged. After a long walk, Ronald spots Sebastian walking and confronts him in the middle of the street outside Annette's apartment building, which results in a fist fight. It turns out that Catherine told Ronald about what he did to Cecile. Annette, who's looking for Sebastian, comes across the fight and attempts to stop it. However, Ronald accidentally pushes her towards the road where a cab is approaching. Sebastian immediately shoves Annette to safety. Instead of pressing the brakes, the driver accidentally speeds up the car, which hits Sebastian. Annette dashes over to his side, and right before he loses consciousness, he expresses his love for her, to which she responds that she loves him too. However, Sebastian didn't make it. His funeral marks the start of a new school year at Manchester Prep. As Catherine snorts cocaine in the comfort room in preparation for Sebastian's eulogy, Annette heads out of a cubicle. Annette pretends to not know Catherine but offers her condolences and advises Catherine to turn to Jesus in times of crisis. Catherine is surprised by what she said but still thanks her. During the service, Catherine gives a self-contained speech to the school about her unsuccessful attempts to persuade Sebastian to change his ways and become a model student like herself. However, students begin to leave halfway through her speech. Feeling frustrated, Catherine rushes outside the chapel to see what's happening and finds that the students are reading something. Cecile then hands her a copy of Sebastian's journal, Cruel Intentions, revealing Sebastian's inner thoughts and conquests involving Catherine. The journal exposes her manipulative and deceptive ways, including cocaine in the crucifix she wears around her wrist. She tears up upon reading it and feels enraged and embarrassed. The headmaster opens Catherine's crucifix to confirm that it is filled with the substance. Everyone looks at her full of disappointment. On the other hand, Annette drives away in Sebastian's vintage car while wearing Sebastian's sunglasses with his journal at her side. Her thoughts are racing with pleasant memories of her time spent with Sebastian. Thanks for watching.